300 years ago, the Vorathi Empire burned the human homeworld and called it a mercy. They left behind broken cities and poisoned skis, certain that the soft pink creatures would die out within a generation. The Empire moved on. The galaxy moved on. The story of humanity became a footnote in old war records, mentioned only as a joke during officer training. But far out on the edge of nowhere, on a frozen rock called Listening Post 9, a young woman named Tessa Brent watched her scanner light up like a winter sky full of stars. She did not blink. She did not breathe loud. She simply leaned closer to the screen and counted the contacts. One massive signature, 40 smaller escorts, Vorathi class, Imperial flagship pattern, the Iron Crown itself. Tessa had grown up hearing the old stories from her grandfather, who heard them from his grandfather. She knew what the Vorathi did to her people. She knew the songs. She knew the names of the dead cities. Her hand stayed steady as she opened the encrypted channel that had been built into the post before she was born. The signal traveled through dark space, jumping from relay to relay, slipping past Vorathi patrol routes like a whisper between strangers. It reached an ice moon no Vorathi captain had ever bothered to map. Beneath the frozen surface, hidden behind layers of stone and synthetic shielding, a war room came alive. Admiral Reyes Holt was already awake when the alert came. He had been awake for most of the last 40 years in one way or another. He looked at the screen, read the data twice, then placed his old metal cup carefully on the desk. His daughter had given him that cup before she shipped out on her first patrol. He touched it like a man saying goodbye to something small. He stood up. The lights in the war room changed from soft white to deep red. Across the moon, deep under the ice, hangar doors began to open, not the small kind, the kind that swallowed warships whole. Far from there, on a hidden shipyard tucked inside a hollow asteroid, Captain Myra Vance felt the floor of her ship shake as the docking clamps released. Her vessel was called the Black Dawn. It was a Hunter-class warship, smaller than a Vorathi cruiser but built with a single ugly purpose: to kill bigger things. The crew strapped in. The lights dimmed. The reactor sang a low note that traveled through every bone on the bridge. Myra was 36 years old. She had never seen the homeworld. No human alive had. The homeworld was a green and blue memory passed down through stories, paintings, and old recordings that crackled with static. Her grandmother had told her once that the sky on the homeworld used to turn pink at sunset, and the air smelled like rain even when the sky was clear. Myra held that picture in her mind as her ship slid out into open space. She opened the fleet channel. Her voice was quiet. She told her crew that today was not about revenge. Today was about being seen again. Today was about the galaxy remembering that humans existed. The crew did not cheer. They did not shout. They simply nodded and went to work because that is what humans had learned to do during 300 years of hiding. Meanwhile, the Iron Crown drifted through the same sector with the lazy confidence of a creature that had never been bitten. High Commander Vrail sat on his command throne and read a poem written in praise of his own conquests. His bridge crew laughed at jokes about lower species. A young officer reported a faint scanner blip near the third asteroid belt. Vrail waved his hand. "Space dust," he said. "Ignore it." The young officer obeyed. He was not paid to argue with a man like Vrail. But the blip was not space dust. The blip was the Black Dawn, sliding through a debris field with its engines cold and its weapons silent. Myra watched the Vorathi dreadnought on her main screen. The Iron Crown was a mountain of black metal and bright lights, longer than a city, armed with cannons that could crack a moon. Her own ship looked like an insect next to it. She did not feel small, she felt patient. The Black Dawn moved closer, then closer. The other ships of her strike group held their positions in the dark, waiting like wolves in tall grass. Myra's tactical officer, a quiet man named Daniel Ortiz, glanced up from his console. He whispered that they were now within firing range. Myra nodded once. She gave the order not to fire, not yet to lock. The Black Dawn's targeting system reached out across the empty space and wrapped invisible fingers around the Iron Crown. The ship did not know it was being held. The dreadnought continued its slow drift, fat and proud, while a small human warship aimed a knife at its throat. Inside the Iron Crown, a sensor officer named Kilo finally noticed something strange on his board. A red warning light he had never seen before. He stared at it. He tapped it. He checked the manual. The manual said target lock detected. He laughed at first because the idea was so impossible that it had to be a glitch. Then the light grew brighter. Then it began to flash. Kilo's laugh died in his throat. He turned slowly toward Vrail's throne. He opened his mouth to speak. The first word came out as a whisper, then as a shout that filled the entire bridge. Target lock. Rain had not fallen on a human world in 3 centuries, but inside the deep moon base of Tarses IV, the engineers had built a chamber that pretended. Water dripped from the ceiling onto stone tiles. Old recorded thunder rolled softly through hidden speakers. Admiral Reyes Holt walked through that chamber every morning before duty, because his mother had told him once that humans were not meant to forget the sound of rain. This morning he did not walk slowly, he marched. Behind him, officers half his age struggled to keep up. The Iron Crown had been locked. The Black Dawn was holding position. The galaxy was about to change in the next 10 minutes, and Holt needed to be in the command pit before the first shot was fired. He pushed through the heavy blast doors and entered a room full of screens, maps, and the soft hum of 300 years of patience finally waking up. Across the void, Captain Myra Vance kept her targeting solution steady. Her bridge was silent. The crew breathed in slow, careful rhythms. The Black Dawn stealth field was the most expensive piece of equipment humans had ever built. It bent light, swallowed heat, and lied to every scanner in known space. The Vorathi could not see her ship. They only saw the proof that they were being aimed at, which was somehow worse. On the Iron Crown, panic spread like fire in dry grass. High Commander Vrail rose slowly from his throne. He was a tall creature, plated in gray muscle, with 2 pairs of eyes that could see in different spectrums. He turned all 4 eyes toward Sensor Officer Kilo and asked him to repeat himself. Kilo stuttered. The target lock signal was real. It was strong. It was coming from somewhere very close, and the Iron Crown's own scanners could not find the ship that held it. Vrail's tactical officer, a veteran named Hesh, tried to remain calm. He ordered counter scans. He ordered shield boost. He ordered the gun crews to wake up and ready their cannons. But the gun crews had not run a real drill in 20 years. They moved too slowly. The shields came up uneven. Half the bridge was already arguing. The Vorathi had forgotten how to be afraid. Fear was a muscle, and theirs had grown soft. Vrail barked an order to fire blind into the asteroid field. Plasma rounds the size of houses tore through the rocks. Stones the size of cities split apart and drifted away. The Black Dawn moved before the first shot landed. Myra had already calculated the angle. She had already chosen her path. The ship slid sideways through a gap that should have been too small, and the Vorathi cannons hit nothing but dust. Myra opened her ship channel. Her voice was flat. She told her crew it was time to be seen. She gave the order to drop the stealth field. The Black Dawn appeared on the Iron Crown's main viewer like a ghost stepping out of fog. Sleek, black, small, unafraid. The Vorathi bridge crew stared at the image and felt something they did not have a word for. A small ship holding a knife at the throat of their pride. But Myra was not alone. Across the asteroid field, 19 more human warships dropped their stealth at the same moment. They were not all the same. Some were long and thin, built for speed. Some were wide and heavy, built for breaking shields. One was a strange diamond shape that no Vorathi had ever seen, with no visible weapons at all. The Vorathi did not know it yet, but that one was the worst of them. 20 human ships, 1 dreadnought. The math should have been simple. The dreadnought was bigger than all 20 combined. It had more guns. It had thicker armor. It had a crew of 40,000. The Black Dawn had a crew of 82. But math is not war. Vrail ordered his ships into a defensive sphere. The 40 escort cruisers tried to form up around the Iron Crown. Their captains shouted at each other on open channels because they had never practiced this formation in real space. Some moved too fast. Some moved too slow. Two of them clipped each other and spun off into the dark with bent hulls. On the human side, no one shouted. The fleet moved like a single living thing. Each ship knew its place. Each captain knew their part. They had practiced this exact moment for 300 years inside dark moons and hidden bays, training against simulations of Vorathi tactics, learning every weakness, every blind spot, every prideful habit. Myra spoke to her fleet on a single channel. She did not give a speech. She said one word. Begin. The diamond-shaped ship moved first. It did not fire. It opened. Panels along its hull slid back, and from inside came a swarm of small black drones, each one no bigger than a person. The drones spread out in a cloud and shot toward the Vorathi formation. The Iron Crown's gunners tried to track them, but the drones did not move in straight lines. They danced. They jumped. They split apart and came back together. Then the drones began to land on the escort cruisers, not to explode, to crawl. Inside the Iron Crown, alarms began to scream from new directions. The escort cruisers were reporting hull breaches, not from weapons, from small invaders that walked through their armor like water through cloth. Vrail's 4 eyes widened. He had read about human creativity in old reports. He had laughed at those reports. He was not laughing now. He gave the order to fire everything. Light travels fast, but news travels faster. Before the first Vorathi cannon had finished its recoil, the truth of what was happening near the asteroid field had already reached 3 other empires through stolen signals and bribed relay stations. In the Council spire on the trade world of Haleth, the Galactic Council was eating dinner when their wall screens went black and then bright with footage. Ambassador Saren of the Velnari, leader of the Council, dropped her cup. The blue wine spilled across her white robes, but she did not look down. She stared at the screen and watched a small black human ship hold weapons lock on the largest Vorathi dreadnought ever built. The room exploded into noise. Ambassadors shouted in 12 languages. The Curan ambassador laughed so hard he had to sit down. The Brennok ambassador shouted that this was a trick, a hoax, a Vorathi mistake. The Velnari historian, an old woman who had spent her life reading forgotten archives, simply began to weep because she had warned them. She had warned the Council 70 years ago that humanity might still be out there. No one had listened. Back at the asteroid field, the Iron Crown opened fire with every cannon on its hull. The sky lit up with green plasma. The Black Dawn was already gone, sliding behind a broken asteroid, using its motion to whip around the rock and come out at a new angle. The Vorathi gunners tried to track her, but their targeting computers were old, and they had been built to fight stationary enemies. Myra's voice on the fleet channel stayed level. She called out positions. She named targets by simple number codes. Her ships responded in clean patterns, the way a flock of birds turns together without thinking. The diamond ship, called the Quiet Mother by her crew, kept releasing more drones. Now there were hundreds of them. They did not all crawl. Some attached themselves to the Iron Crown's antenna arrays. Some clung to weapon ports. Some simply spun in place and made the Vorathi sensors see ghost ships in every direction. On the Iron Crown's bridge, sensor officer Kilo could not tell what was real anymore. His screen showed 20 human ships, then 200, then 12, then none, then 400. He shouted numbers that made no sense. Hesh, the tactical officer, slapped his console and demanded a clean picture. Kilo had no clean picture to give. This was not jamming. The Vorathi knew jamming. This was something stranger. The drones were not blocking signals. They were copying them. Each drone wore a fake heat signature and a fake hull pattern, broadcasting the shape of a human warship that did not exist. The Iron Crown was now surrounded by lies. Vrail's pride finally cracked. He ordered his communications officer to send an emergency call to the Vorathi Inner Fleet. Help, reinforcements, anything. The communications officer tried. The signal would not leave the ship. The drones on the antenna arrays were not destroying the comms. They were eating them, slowly, politely. Inside the Black Dawn, Captain Myra Vance watched a small green light on her console turn on. That light meant the Iron Crown was now deaf and blind to the rest of the galaxy. No one in Vorathi space knew what was happening here. No one would come to help. She did not smile. She simply gave the next order. Tighten the noose. The human ships moved closer in slow, careful steps. Each ship had a job. Two small fast vessels, the Sparrow and the Thread, darted past the Vorathi escort cruisers and fired their guns into the dreadnought's engine bell. They did not aim to destroy. They aimed to wound. The Iron Crown's main thrusters flickered. The dreadnought began to drift sideways, unable to turn fast enough. Vrail ordered ramming. Two Vorathi cruisers tried to charge the human formation. They never made it. The wide ship called the Anvil rotated once and fired a single shot from its main rail cannon. The shell crossed the distance in less than a second, struck the lead cruiser at its weakest point, and went straight through the ship without slowing down. The cruiser broke in half and silently came apart. The second cruiser turned away, its captain refusing the order to continue. The Vorathi crew was learning what humans had known for centuries. Some weapons are made by genius. Other weapons are made by people who have lost everything and have nothing left except patience and rage. Across the bridge of the Iron Crown, Vrail's officers began to break. One ran from his station. Two more started to argue about retreat. Hesh shouted orders that nobody followed. Vrail stood frozen, watching the impossible happen on every screen. A new face appeared on the dreadnought's main viewer. Captain Myra Vance. Black uniform, calm eyes, no anger on her face. She spoke in Vorathi slowly so that everyone on the bridge understood every word. She told them they had one chance. Surrender the Iron Crown, stand down all weapons, open the docking bays, or be removed from the galaxy by people who had already lost everything once and would not lose it again. Vrail's lower jaw trembled. He stared at the human captain and tried to find the words his pride wanted him to say. He could not find them. The bridge waited. The galaxy waited. Even on Halath, the council spire fell silent as the ambassadors leaned closer to their screens. Vrail opened his mouth. His answer would change everything. There is an old Vorathi saying carved into the stone walls of their war academy. Pride is the armor of kings. It was the first thing every officer learned. It was the last thing High Commander Vrail remembered as he stood on his burning bridge and chose his answer. He did not surrender. He spit at the screen. He called Captain Myra Vance a small, soft creature from a forgotten rock. He swore that the Vorathi Empire would burn every human moon and salt every human field. He told her that humanity was a mistake the galaxy had already forgotten once and would forget again. Myra's face did not change. She closed the channel without saying another word. On the Iron Crown's bridge, the silence after that closed channel was worse than any shouting. Some of Vrail's officers looked at their commander with eyes full of fear. Others looked away. A young engineer in the back of the bridge slowly removed his rank pin and placed it on his console. He had decided he no longer served this man. In the human fleet, Myra spoke a single word into her command channel. Proceed. The Quiet Mother, the strange diamond ship, did something the Vorathi had not seen before. It opened a second set of panels along its belly. Out came not drones, but a single long cable of woven metal that stretched across the dark like a fishing line. At the end of the cable was a small black sphere about the size of a human head. The sphere drifted slowly toward the Iron Crown's outer hull. Hesh, the tactical officer, screamed at his gunners to shoot the sphere. They tried. The point defense guns fired hundreds of rounds. The sphere wobbled and weaved on its cable like a leaf in a stream, and every round missed. The Vorathi did not know that the cable itself was alive in a small electrical way, sending tiny signals that nudged the sphere just enough to avoid each shot. The sphere touched the Iron Crown's hull. It stuck there. Then it opened. What came out of the sphere was not a weapon in the way the Vorathi understood weapons. It was a liquid, a thick silver liquid that spread across the hull like spilled milk. The liquid did not burn the metal. It did not cut it. It simply moved into every gap and seam, and then it hardened. Within 30 seconds, the entire outer skin of the Iron Crown was sealed shut. Every gun port, every escape pod hatch, every shield emitter. The dreadnought could no longer fire. It could no longer launch fighters. It could no longer even open a door to space. Vrail stared at the readings and refused to believe them. He ordered the gun crews to break through the seal from inside. They tried. The hardened liquid was not metal and not stone. It was something humans had invented in their hidden labs, designed for exactly this moment. It bent the cannon shells back into the ship's own barrels. 3 Vorathi gun decks exploded from their own weapons. The Iron Crown shook. Smoke filled the corridors. Fires that should not have been possible in a sealed ship began to grow because the ventilation systems no longer worked. The crew of 40,000 began to realize they were trapped inside a steel coffin. Far away on Haleth, the council spire had gone completely silent. Ambassador Saren stood at the front of the chamber and watched. She had served the council for 60 years. She had seen wars and treaties and small, ugly betrayals. She had never seen anything like this. The Curan ambassador, who had been laughing earlier, was no longer laughing. He stood up slowly and spoke for the first time in hours. He asked the room a quiet question. "What kind of people," he said, "build a weapon that does not kill but simply takes away the choice to fight?" Nobody had an answer. Back at the asteroid field, the Vorathi escort cruisers were breaking. Without the Iron Crown's guns to support them, they had no center. Some tried to retreat. The human ships did not chase them. Myra had given orders. Let them run. Let them carry the story home. 3 cruisers fled into deep space, their captains weeping inside their helmets. 2 more surrendered, opening their bays and powering down their guns. The rest tried to keep fighting. They did not last long. Inside the sealed Iron Crown, High Commander Vrail walked off his bridge for the first time in years. He walked alone, through smoke-filled corridors past crew members who would not meet his eyes. He went to his private chamber. He opened a small drawer in his desk. Inside was a ceremonial blade. He looked at the blade for a long time. He thought about pride. He thought about his children who would grow up in a galaxy that had watched their father fail. He put the blade back in the drawer. He returned to the bridge. He did not march this time. He walked like an old man. He sat down on his throne and spoke quietly to his communications officer. He asked for a channel to the human captain. The drones on the antennas allowed this one signal to pass. Myra knew they would. The quiet mother had been designed to let surrender messages through. Vrail's face appeared on the Black Dawn screen. He no longer looked tall. He no longer looked proud. He looked tired in a way that only the truly defeated can look. He opened his mouth and offered his ship. Myra accepted. The galaxy held its breath. But the story was not over. Somewhere far away, in the heart of the Vorathi capital, an old emperor heard the news and rose from his throne in cold black fury. The Vorathi capital world was called Drashan Prime, and at its heart sat a throne made from the melted swords of 300 conquered species. Emperor Solvan the Eighth had ruled from that throne for 90 years. He had never been challenged. He had never lost. He had never even been told no. When the news of the Iron Crown reached him, he was in his garden, feeding small bright fish in a pond made of polished stone. The messenger trembled. The emperor listened without speaking. When the messenger finished, Salvin dropped the fish food into the pond and watched the fish eat for a long moment. Then he turned and walked back into his palace. He did not run. He did not shout. He simply gave one order to his war council. Send the second fleet. The Vorathi Second Fleet was not like the Iron Crown's patrol group. It was the real teeth of the Empire. 600 warships, 12 dreadnoughts, crews who had actually fought in real wars, not lazy parade officers. The fleet was kept in deep reserve, hidden behind the inner colonies, used only when the Empire wanted to remind the galaxy who ruled it. Salvin sent every ship. He gave them one order: find the human fleet, end it, leave nothing. Far away, at the asteroid field, the human ships were already pulling back. The Iron Crown drifted helpless in the dark, its hull sealed shut, its crew of 40,000 alive but powerless. Myra had not destroyed the dreadnought. She had captured it whole. A boarding team had cut a careful hole through the silver seal and entered the ship through one specific corridor that the seal had been programmed to allow. The boarding team did not shoot anyone. They walked through smoking hallways with their weapons low and their helmets off. They spoke in calm voices. They told Vorathi crew members that the fight was over and that nobody else needed to die today. Most of the crew put down their weapons. A few did not. Those few were taken alive anyway because the humans had brought stun nets, not killing rifles. This confused the Vorathi more than anything else. They had been taught that humans were savage. They had expected fire and screaming. Instead, they got tired soldiers handing out water bottles and helping wounded Vorathi medics carry their patients. Captain Myra Vance walked the dreadnought's bridge in person. She looked at Vrail, sitting small on his throne, and she did not gloat. She simply asked him for the Emperor's name. Vrail told her. She nodded once, as if confirming something she already knew. She told him the Empire would send a fleet now. Vrail agreed. He said the second fleet would come, and it would not be merciful. He warned her in a low voice that the human fleet could not survive what was coming. Myra looked at him with something close to kindness in her eyes. She told him that humans had spent 300 years preparing for exactly this moment. Not the moment of victory, the moment after, the moment when the Empire decided to truly fight back. She left him on his throne and returned to the Black Dawn. 6 days later, the Vorathi Second Fleet arrived. They came out of jump space in a wall of light, 600 warships in perfect formation. The lead dreadnought was called the Salvin's Wrath, named for the Emperor himself, and it dwarfed even the Iron Crown. Its commander was an old veteran named Karn, a soldier who had earned every scar on his face. He looked at the empty asteroid field on his scanners and frowned. There were no human ships there. The Iron Crown still drifted in place, but the rest was gone. No fleet, no Black Dawn, nothing. Karn ordered deep scans. The scans came back empty. He ordered wider scans. Nothing. He ordered a full sector sweep. The sector was silent. Karn knew this was wrong. A small fleet that had just won a great battle should be celebrating somewhere close. They should be near their prize. He tightened his fingers on the arms of his chair and waited. The first sign was a flicker on his comms board. A single signal coming from inside his own fleet. He ordered it traced. The signal came from one of his own escort cruisers. A junior officer reported that his ship had received a strange message, addressed to Commander Karn by name. Karn opened the message. It was a video. Captain Myra Vance stood on her bridge. She looked at him through the screen and spoke calmly. She told him she had been watching his fleet jump in. She told him that every Vorathi ship had a small flaw in its jump engine, a tiny flaw the Empire had never bothered to fix because nobody had ever needed to use it. She told him that humans had bothered to study that flaw for 200 years. Then she ended the message. Karn stared at the dark screen. He did not understand. He turned to his engineer and asked what she meant. The engineer ran a scan on the jump engines. His face went pale. The flaw was not just a flaw, it was a door, and someone had walked through it. Across the Vorathi Second Fleet, in every single ship at once, the jump engines began to charge themselves without orders. The engineers screamed and tried to stop them. They could not. The engines were no longer listening to Vorathi commands. They were listening to something else. Karn opened his mouth to give an order he would never finish. The Solvan's wrath jumped. So did every other ship in his fleet. They jumped together, all 600 of them, into a single unknown coordinate. The asteroid field fell silent again. Far away, in deep dark space, 600 Vorathi warships came out of jump space and found themselves surrounded. Long ago, before the Vorathi had ever heard the word human, an old engineer on a hidden moon had asked a strange question. What if we built a place that nobody could find unless we wanted them to find it? What if we built a graveyard for fleets that had not died yet? His name was lost to time. His idea was not. The place he designed was called the Pocket. It sat in a fold of space that no normal star map could see. To get there, a ship had to follow a very specific jump pattern, using a very specific flaw in a very specific kind of engine. The Vorathi had built that engine in their factories for 200 years. They had never noticed the door humanity had quietly carved into the design. Commander Karn's fleet came out of jump space inside the Pocket. His scanners came back online slowly. What they showed made his old soldier's heart stop for one beat. The Pocket was a sphere of dark space about the size of a small solar system. It had no stars, it had no planets, it had only ships, human ships, thousands of them. Not 20, not 100, thousands. Karn stared at his scanner board and could not breathe. The fleet around him stretched in every direction. Battleships, carriers, strange dark vessels he could not identify. They were not all new. Some were old, scarred from years of secret patrols. Some were brand new, built within the last few months in shipyards the Vorathi did not know existed. For 300 years humanity had been building, not just hiding, building. While the Empire grew lazy on tribute, humans had used every scrap of resource, every stolen blueprint, every traded secret to grow a fleet in the dark. Karn realized something terrible. The Empire had never actually fought a real war. Not in his lifetime, not in his father's lifetime. They had only crushed weak species who could not push back. They had forgotten what a real opponent looked like. He was looking at one now. A single signal came through his bridge speakers, a calm voice, Captain Myra Vance. She told him he had a choice. He could fight, and the Pocket would become his fleet's tomb. Or he could go home and tell his emperor that the galaxy had a new shape now and that humans were a part of it. Karn closed his eyes. He thought of his daughters. He thought of his soldiers. He thought of the emperor on his throne of melted swords. He thought of the old saying about pride being the armor of kings. He opened his eyes and gave the order to stand down. Every Vorathi ship in the Pocket lowered its shields and powered down its guns. 600 warships surrendered without a single shot fired. It was the largest peaceful surrender in the recorded history of the galaxy. The humans did not take their ships. They did not board them. They simply opened a return path in the jump pattern and let the Vorathi Second Fleet go home. When Karn's fleet arrived back at Drashan Prime, every captain carried the same message. The Empire was over, not destroyed, not conquered, just over. The age of taking whatever the Vorathi wanted from whoever was too weak to stop them. That age was finished. Emperor Solvan the Eighth heard the report in his garden. He did not feed the fish that day. He sat by the pond for a long time and watched the water. Then he stood up and walked to his throne. He sat on the melted swords of 300 conquered species and gave one final order. Open negotiations with the humans. The Galactic Council convened on neutral ground 3 weeks later. Ambassador Saren of the Velnari opened the session. For the first time in 200 years, A human delegation walked into the chamber. They wore black uniforms with simple silver stars. Admiral Reyes Holt led them. Captain Myra Vance walked at his side. The Vorathi ambassador sat across from them. He was not Solvin. The Emperor had stayed home. The ambassador was a young woman named Eros, chosen because she had not been part of the old wars. She spoke first. She did not apologize. The galaxy had not yet invented a word large enough for that apology, but she did something her empire had never done before. She asked. She asked humans what they wanted. Admiral Holt stood up slowly. He looked at the ambassadors of 12 great houses. He looked at the Vorathi delegation. He spoke in a voice that was neither soft nor loud. He said humans wanted a seat, just a seat, at the table. They did not want revenge. They did not want tribute. They did not want a single Vorathi world. They wanted to be counted again. They wanted their homeworld back, the broken one, to heal it on their own time. And they wanted the galaxy to never again forget that small species can build great things in the dark. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then Ambassador Saren stood up. She walked across the chamber. She extended her hand to Admiral Holt. It was a human gesture. She had learned it from old footage of the homeworld. Holt took her hand and shook it. Outside the chamber, news traveled across the galaxy. On 1,000 worlds, alien children asked their parents about the small species that had come back from the dark. On Drashan Prime, an old emperor watched his fish and thought about pride. On a green and blue ruined world, the first human ships in 3 centuries landed quietly, carrying seeds, water, and rain machines. A bird, the first one born on the homeworld in 300 years, lifted its small wings and flew.